You carry a spark that most people never encounter in a lifetime. When someone meets you, it's not just another interaction, it's a rupture in the rhythm of their world. You don't slip into categories or tidy explanations, you exist as a force that unsettles and redefines. What they feel in your presence isn't surface admiration, it's a storm breaking loose inside them, one they can't disguise no matter how hard they try. There's a way their attention locks onto you that goes beyond curiosity. Each word you speak catches in their chest as if their body is trying to hold onto the moment. Long after the conversation fades, their mind refuses to let go, replaying your presence like a song they can't turn off. It's not obsession with a mask you wear, it's the shock of encountering someone who doesn't flinch, someone who lives without trimming themselves down for approval. The moment they recognized you, something inside them shifted. It wasn't about attraction in the ordinary sense, it was confrontation. They weren't seeing you as much as they were colliding with the self they buried long ago. A self that once laughed too loud, dreamed too big, and burned too brightly before the world taught them how to dim. Your presence does something involuntary to them. It resonates through their entire being like an old bell they forgot existed, shaking off the dust of years of compromise. This isn't about you trying to inspire, nor them trying to change. It's a resonance that can't be stopped, an echo reminding them of a truth they thought they had silenced forever. In you, they catch glimpses of a strength older than language. A force not manufactured or borrowed but primal, waiting patiently beneath their layers of performance. That reflection terrifies them because it demands responsibility, but it also intoxicates them because it promises freedom. They realize this awakening isn't something they chose. It arrived uninvited, crashing through their defenses like lightning tearing through the night sky. It doesn't ask permission, it demands acknowledgement. And no matter how much they try to return to the safety of routine, they cannot unsee what you have revealed. This is the moment they remember they are more than the roles they play, more than the costumes they wear to be accepted. Through you, they rediscover a power so raw and alive that it feels both dangerous and divine. And in that recognition, whether they admit it or not, their life will never be the same again. They are unsettled because being near you feels like standing at the edge of two worlds at once. They hover close, then recoil, unsure whether to cross the invisible line your presence draws. Every hesitation reveals their struggle, drawn forward by something undeniable yet terrified of what advancing might demand of them. To move closer would mean letting go of the image that once earned them belonging. Turning away, however, carries its own torment. To ignore what has been awakened feels like refusing a truth too potent to deny. The battle rages beneath their skin, showing itself in the smallest betrayals of posture and tone. They lean toward you instinctively, then retreat as if caught. Words stumble on their lips, their eyes linger too long, exposing a turmoil they cannot mask. Their gestures betray what they cannot articulate. The ground you hold is not just space but a domain free of performance, a sphere where masks dissolve and realness stands unchallenged. To step closer requires them to discard every shield and script that once promised safety. Each inch gained toward you is an inch surrendered to their own honesty. The pull they feel is tangled with dread. They can neither fully advance nor fully withdraw, trapped in a tension that destabilizes their entire balance. In your steadiness, they misinterpret calm as emptiness. What they cannot understand, they label as isolation. Their fractured lens twists wholeness into lack, mistaking your groundedness as something fragile. They struggle to grasp a reality in which fulfillment does not depend on another's approval. Their reflex is to translate self-completion into loneliness, as though independence must surely hide a hidden wound. In their mind, strength without dependency feels like a silence begging to be filled. Their projection cloaks you with needs that are not yours but theirs. Through this distortion, they assign to you the fragility that belongs to them. They tell themselves your resolve is merely armor, your clarity merely cover. Their misreading opens the door for them to imagine themselves as rescuer, confusing your fire with a flickering flame in need of protection. This false narrative blinds them to what truly stands before them. In their desperation, they cling to the tools of pretense. Faced with authenticity, they fall back on masks and acts, as though approaching you were a role to rehearse instead of a truth to embrace. They prepare an entrance as if stepping onto a stage, unaware that no performance can earn entry into a space where only the real survives. They twist themselves into shapes that are not their own, rehearsing interactions as though life were an endless stage play. Every gesture, every chosen tone is designed to slip past your awareness unnoticed, yet the irony is sharp. They reveal themselves most clearly in the act of pretending. They believe if they embody softness, if they appear harmless enough, they can coax you into lowering the very guard that doesn't exist in the way they imagine. Their calculations run endlessly: too much openness and they risk rejection, too much distance and they risk irrelevance. They hover between masks, shifting from one borrowed costume to another, convinced there must be a formula to reach you. What they fail to recognize is that your essence cannot be contained within formulas, nor can it be boxed into the limits of their fractured logic. Their entire strategy dissolves before it begins. For them, performance feels like a weapon polished to perfection, yet when turned toward you, it strikes only emptiness. They cannot fathom that presence cannot be tricked, that connection cannot be engineered. They operate on illusions, unaware that the very thing which drew them toward you was your refusal to operate on illusions at all. Their approach was over before it was born. In chasing connection through false means, they move further from the truth they claim to desire. What they do not see is that you have already stripped away their disguises in silence. Long before they offered their rehearsed phrases, you traced the outlines of their hidden patterns with ease. You perceived not only the roles they play for others, but the wounds that birthed those roles. They were startled to discover themselves illuminated without warning. Not the version they willingly display, but the raw form buried beneath decades of careful concealment. They were exposed not because you demanded confession, but because you perceived without effort. You heard the pause before their contrived laughter, saw the tremor in the stillness between words. You caught the hollow echoes behind their practiced charm. You sensed the mismatch between sound and soul, and in that quiet perception, they were undone. To them it felt as though a searchlight had cut through their fog, revealing everything they tried to blur. For moments they drifted into unfamiliar stillness, shaken by the rare experience of being known without pretense. What terrifies them most is that you did not labor to uncover them, you simply looked, and everything fell into view. No tricks, no probing, no demand. Just vision sharpened by your own relentless honesty. Now they are left with a question that burns deeper than anything you ever said. If you can see through them without trying, how many others might hold the same power? In that fear, they stumble, because the connection they crave cannot be controlled. They find themselves drawn into something they cannot command, an unspoken current that overrides intention. It is not rooted in desire of the body or admiration of the mind, but in the recognition of something deeper, one core answering the call of another. This resonance operates beneath all rehearsed identities, untouched by the rules they've relied on to navigate the world. Their mind scrambles to convert the unfamiliar into the familiar. It takes the immensity of what is occurring and tries to shrink it into labels it knows: crush, attraction, admiration. They collapse what is vast into what is ordinary. In their urgency to explain, they flatten the experience into categories too small to contain it. The attempt fails. No matter how hard they try to press the connection into a familiar mold, it slips free. They begin borrowing scripts from encounters that were never theirs, imitating methods others used with you, unconsciously repeating strategies that once belonged to different faces and different times. In doing so, they recreate the very dynamics that ensure failure. What unnerves them most is that this pull cannot be governed. For someone who has lived behind carefully crafted boundaries, the fact that this presence escapes regulation shakes them to the core. Their system has always been about measuring distance, managing intensity, deciding when to engage and when to retreat. None of those tools work here. The pull doesn't fade with distraction. It doesn't dull when ignored. Even in their attempts to silence it, the awareness only grows louder. The loss of modulation sparks equal parts awe and dread. To feel something beyond their ability to filter or redirect leaves them vulnerable in ways they've never allowed themselves to be. With no frame left to rely upon, panic pushes them toward their oldest survival tactic, performance disguised as intimacy. They reach for the illusion of power through methods they mistake for connection. They fall back on seduction, not realizing that such maneuvers only widen the distance. What they don't see is that the very strength of this force lies in its refusal to be controlled. The magnetism they feel is not an invitation to manipulate, but a demand to surrender. And until they stop reaching for masks and borrowed gestures, they will remain outside the truth that first unsettled them. They convince themselves that your self-contained strength is an obstacle to conquer, not a reality to honor. In their mind, independence translates into provocation, and your groundedness becomes a dare. What they miss entirely is that what unsettles them is not hostility but wholeness, a quality they mistake for opposition because they cannot yet imagine it existing without conflict. Through this warped lens, your radiance is redefined as a weapon aimed at them. They twist the experience of being near your light into evidence of having acquired it, as though proximity granted ownership. In this illusion, they walk away believing they now carry what was never theirs to hold, mistaking reflection for possession. From here, the most dangerous misinterpretation grows. They recast your presence as performance, translating simplicity into strategy. The way you speak, the way you move without calculation, becomes, in their narrative, intentional choreography meant to lure. What is ordinary in you is rewritten in their mind as coded messages begging for response. They cannot see that what unsettles them has nothing to do with manipulation. The gravity they feel has never been about design or technique, it is recognition colliding with the version of themselves they have suppressed. The pull was born within them, not projected from you. And yet, blinded by this misreading, they prepare responses to a play that was never staged. Elaborate schemes, carefully rehearsed gestures, words weighted with intent, all designed to meet a performance that doesn't exist. Their entire approach is anchored in a misunderstanding that only distances them further. The resonance they feel is a mirror, not a snare. It points them back to a buried truth they've long denied. But instead of looking inward, they cast their attention outward, treating your existence as a puzzle to solve rather than a reminder of their own neglected wholeness. Their failure lies not in desire, but in translation. Until they recognize that the force drawing them forward is their own essence stirring in recognition, they will remain trapped, chasing shadows of a story you never wrote, misreading sovereignty as seduction, and confusing clarity for conquest. The quiet alerts inside you are not accidents, they are finely tuned responses born from deep inner wisdom. What may feel like tiny ripples of unease or subtle pauses in your comfort are signals, not distortions. Each slight hesitation is the language of your inner compass, pointing toward what does not fully resonate. These sensations are not exaggerations of fear or inventions of a restless mind. They are the product of your cultivated clarity, the sharpened perception that has grown out of your lived experiences. Your inner field can detect when a surface display doesn't match the undertone beneath it, when the outward gesture holds a different weight than the energy it carries. Notice how your being contracts when something polished on the outside conceals a different essence. That faint tension or internal recoil is not a flaw in your sensitivity but a natural alignment mechanism. It's a safeguard woven into your awareness, gently nudging you away from false layers and closer to authentic ground. These inner cues are not simply biological reactions, they are the fruit of your soul's training. Every moment of disappointment you've survived, every distortion you've unmasked, every test of trust you've endured has contributed to this heightened radar. You've learned to sense what words alone cannot reveal. This guidance does not insist that danger surrounds you. Instead, it reminds you that not everything dressed in sincerity springs from truth. It reveals when behavior is crafted rather than genuine, when presence is performed rather than lived. And it offers you the choice to step back without demanding proof. You do not need to rationalize why you sense these inconsistencies. Explanation is not required for truth to be valid. The refinement of your perception stands as evidence on its own. What matters is that you no longer dismiss the inner pull that whispers when something rings hollow. Your discernment is the living archive of every challenge you've transcended. It is the accumulation of battles won within yourself, the wisdom born from shadow and light alike. Trust it fully, for it is not random, it is the voice of your evolution, quietly steering you toward authenticity without the need for outward confirmation. The depth of your perception extends into layers your rational mind cannot easily reach, operating as a refined signal system that quietly filters what aligns with your true growth. It gathers subtle fragments your thoughts may overlook and translates them into an embodied knowing. This sensitivity is your safeguard, ensuring that what does not nourish your path is recognized even before it reveals itself outwardly. When others cannot place you into their familiar categories, their responses may shift into patterned behaviors aimed at lowering the resonance of your presence. One of the first approaches is the gentle insertion of hesitation into your clarity. Not through direct confrontation, but through veiled remarks meant to make you second-guess what you already know. The intent is to plant questions where certainty once lived. Another approach involves scrambling the rhythm of interaction itself. Rather than flowing naturally, the exchange becomes peppered with jarring shifts, sudden detours, or mismatched responses. These disruptions are not the spontaneity of an open heart, but calculated diversions designed to tilt your grounding. Their aim is not conversation but imbalance, seeking to make you step away from the stillness you carry. There is also the mask of indifference that hides an intense scrutiny. A performance of ease overlays the reality of careful observation, where every flicker of your expression is silently measured. The facade of distance disguises a sharp fixation, and what seems like dismissal is often a quiet evaluation of how you handle disregard. A subtler strategy emerges in the selective acknowledgement of your presence. Contributions may be brushed aside as though unnoticed, not because they lack impact, but because the absence of recognition serves as a test. The unspoken question is whether your worth can stand without outward validation, or whether you will bend to the suggestion of being unseen. In certain moments, this maneuver sharpens into invisibility performed as presence. They may act as though you are not there while simultaneously tracking every movement. It is a paradoxical tactic, visibility cloaked in denial, that examines how you respond when your existence is both disregarded and secretly watched. Through all of these layers, the thread remains constant, the attempt to draw you into a framework that diminishes your clarity. Yet your inner compass does not falter. The same perception that catches whispers beneath words also exposes the structure of these tactics. What appears as confusion to the surface mind is, to your deeper self, recognition of patterns designed to reduce your light. The recurring maneuvers that play out before you are not random, they are subtle experiments intended to see whether the silence of being overlooked will spark a reaction within you. No matter how varied the method, the outcome is the same, an attempt to detect the cracks where your strength might bend. Each approach is less about genuine exchange and more about pressing to see if your grounded nature can be pulled into their framework of control. What dissolves these tests is not resistance but recognition. The moment the pattern becomes visible, its power diminishes. To witness without engaging is to disarm the mechanism. Awareness itself acts as the shield, for once you see clearly, the tactic can no longer weave itself into your reality. The energy that once sought to destabilize finds no place to land. At the core, their maneuvering attempts to shape your self-perception. By selectively offering attention, then withdrawing it without reason, they create a rhythm designed to tether you to their approval. The game is not about love or acceptance, but about conditioning you to believe your worth must be validated externally. The expectation is that you will shrink, trade your sovereignty for a fragment of acknowledgement. This rhythm intensifies through distortion of your very essence. What shines brightly within you is recast as something heavy, flawed, or dangerous. Insight is labeled as severity. Strength is renamed as rigidity. Firmness is reduced to fear. In this way, the very qualities that define your light are inverted into burdens that supposedly need correction. And yet, this sequence is less about calculated cruelty and more about unconscious programming. It is not born from deliberate malice, but from an internal system unable to engage with the depth of your energy as it truly exists. Their responses are conditioned loops, repeated attempts to compress what does not fit their inherited patterns. Seeing this truth removes the need for resentment, for it reveals the limitation rather than intent. Their reactions are evidence of a system meeting what it cannot yet understand. Standing before authenticity, their conditioning falters, and the crossroads appears. They are faced with a decision: remain in the cycle of repetition or step towards something uncharted. In this moment, the possibility of transformation is offered to them more clearly than at any other point in their journey. A new path is available, though it requires courage they may not yet hold. To walk it is to abandon performance and face the unfamiliar honesty of real connection. It is an invitation into mutual respect, into a rhythm where both exist as equals rather than roles. What they choose in response to your presence will echo far beyond this bond, shaping not just how they meet you but how they meet truth in every form it arrives. The horizon before them holds a question only they can answer. Will they step forward into the raw terrain of truth, or fall back into the repetition of masks and rehearsed identity? Will they choose the stretch of transformation, or the comfort of stagnation's cocoon? The path is theirs alone, while your only task is to remain unwavering in the steadiness of your own resonance. No matter which direction they lean, the encounter itself has carved an opening. Their fixation on you is not trivial, it marks the arrival of a chance to leap into a higher plane of growth. Whether they seize or squander that chance belongs entirely to them. What they will discover, should they try to bend you with doubt or withdrawal, is that your fire remains untouched. The sovereignty you embody is not negotiable, not fragile, not waiting on outside permission. Their projections of fixing or reshaping you only mirror their own disowned fragments. The very qualities they dismiss in you, your insight, your firmness, your authenticity, are the same ones they traded away to blend with the expectations of others. What you actually require is not their permission or protection. It is their willingness to stand in their own raw honesty. Not another layer of performance, but the courage to face what they've hidden from themselves. You need not their shielding but their bravery. You need not their guidance but their unfiltered truth. The kind of connection that would serve is one grounded in equality, where both step forward without masks. Their pull toward you is more than curiosity, it is a signal of their own threshold. In you they encounter both inspiration and discomfort, and in that tension lies their decision, to evolve or to retreat. The clarity they glimpsed when they first saw you, before their defenses rushed in, is the most accurate vision they've ever had. Everything layered afterward, every attempt to box you in or minimize your light, is distortion born from fear. The question before them is whether they will trust that initial recognition or collapse into the safety of illusion. Your value does not sway with their perception. Whether they rise or retreat, whether they see clearly or through distortion, your essence remains untouched. Their fascination only betrays a memory of themselves long buried, a truth they once carried and then abandoned. You stand as the reminder. And whether they remember or forget, your only responsibility is to keep standing in the truth they cannot categorize, uncompromised, steady, and whole.